All right.
So, can you tell me if you've seen how many of my typing sessions you've seen before?
I've seen 7 or 8 of them, maybe 10 of them.
Okay,
I
cool.
work at a factory and I have a lot of time to listen to stuff, and I've been listening to MBTI stuff kind of off and on for, I don't know, the better part of like 2 years. I kind of like come in and out of trying to learn more about the cognitive functions and whatnot. And I came across your
Yes,
channel,
you can sit next to mommy.
I'd say maybe a week ago,
Hmm.
and I checked out a lot of your content. And the reason why I wanted to do a typing session with you was because you seem to be a lot more knowledgeable than I think a good majority of the MBTI people. I tend to have a pet peeve that when people don't seem to have their own type right, I have a hard time kind of taking their input about it because it's sort of like you kind of have to be your own meter to then kind of flower out with how you would interpret cognitive functions in other people. And so I totally bought that you were an ENTP from like the first video that you started posting. Like
Hmm.
I pretty much typed you that myself before.
Do you find yourself typing your coworkers? Or do you find yourself thinking about their behaviors in terms of cognitive functions?
Um, Sometimes, like if somebody does something that seems to be in the more extreme side of a cognitive function, I'll try to place them. Uh, I don't usually do it a whole lot though at work.
So, can you explain to me some thoughts about how it might be, or what some arguments might be as to why, if you have yourself typed wrong, that makes you less reliable about typing other people?
Well, you know, I guess it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to say that because I don't I don't quite have down what my type is.
I'm not.
Like,
Look, I'm not challenging your affirmation. I'm asking you to provide me some possible reasons that one might make in defense of that claim, because I'm trying to test your expert intuition.
um, well, one reason I would just say is that you at least have to have sort of a an anchoring. I think. Um, like if you're dominantly introverted thinking and you're aware of it, I think it's easier for you to tell the contrast between that and introverted feeling, or if you have an introverted perceiving function dominantly.
Okay. Do you see yourself as somebody who knows first, determines first, acts first, or reacts first?
I would say generally someone who knows first.
Okay. Um, can you tell me what you know about your day so far in terms of sequence of insignificant events? Like, got up, went pee, put on this shirt, then realized it had a hole in it, changed that shirt, like little shit.
Yeah. Let's see. I got up at about, well, my alarm went off at 4 o'clock, and I snoozed until about 4:45
In the morning?
in the morning. Yeah.
That's early.
Yeah, I have to be at work at 6. And then I usually get off at 2:30, sometimes 4:30. But I got up, I went downstairs. I tend to do the same thing in the morning before work a lot of the time, so but as far as the detail of it, I got up and I went pee. I thought about letting the dog out, but I decided not to let him sleep a little bit longer because he wasn't making any noise or anything. And I came downstairs and I made my coffee. I drank my coffee and I vaped for a little bit and drank my coffee.
Like out on, like staring out the window, or what?
No, I was.
Excuse me.
I tend to do a lot of like a little bit of thinking in the morning, kind of like.
But you're not reading or looking at media, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I was looking at something. I might have been watching one of your videos actually this morning. I've been on kind of a kick with watching your videos.
Cool.
And
so, is it more important to you to get up in the morning and not be rushed, or to get as much sleep as you can and risk being rushed?
well, it's usually pretty important for me to get sleep. I do think about it quite a bit about like that I need to get more sleep, but I can't seem to get myself to bed quite as early as I should for the time that I get up. But I usually get like on work nights around 6 or 7 hours of sleep.
Yeah, probably the lie that I tell more often than any other lie is, I'm going to bed now or soon. I say that all the time. For every 10, 15, 20 times I say it, I only go to bed once. So, okay, cool. So you need a minimum of like 6 hours to function normally, you say?
Well, it depends. Sometimes I function better when I get very little sleep because it kind of puts you in fight or flight mode a little bit because you're running on lower resources. So I tend to actually be a little bit more clear-minded and productive throughout the day.
Mm.
Even a bit more social, like if I don't get as much sleep as I need. And I think I read something sometime recently that's actually a clinically proven thing. But I can only really testify for my own experience with that.
Okay. So how much do you think your own knowledge is informed by your experience, your accumulated learned sets of information, versus how much of it is informed by your intuition about what's going on right now? Just as a self-reporting question.
Well, it's a little bit of a mix of both because well, there's certain kinds of knowledge that I accrue throughout the day, like new knowledge, kind of by kind of looking at people and kind of assessing what's going on with them right now, like as far as like what their motivations are for like why they're saying things that they're saying and whatnot. And I guess that is kind of informed by previous experience.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Have you heard in any of the typing sessions you've watched me tell the potato touch story?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, hey, actually, I came up with a perfect example of this Saturday night. My neighbor was. I live in a duplex. My neighbor was in the process of moving out, and I was going over throughout the day, and I was helping him pack up his shit. And toward the end of the night, he had borrowed our vacuum cleaner, and
What kind of vacuum do you have?
What kind of vacuum?
Yeah. I like vacuum cleaners.
Really?
Yeah.
I had kind of an obsession with them when I was a little kid. My little brother also did for some reason.
They're the
Like
only machine simple enough for me to understand.
Yeah. My little brother actually used to have my mother take pictures of the sweepers at Walmart when she would go there. And he would just like look at them.
So do you have a Dyson or something?
Oh God, I don't even remember. It's upstairs right now. I would have to look at it.
Hmm.
My girlfriend's the one who bought it and usually does the sweeping, so I think she would probably know, but I can't tell off the top of my head.
Do you think your girlfriend spent a lot of time considering what features she was looking for in a vacuum before getting it?
Uh,
Would
not.
you?
I don't. I don't think so because it's not a very fancy vacuum. It's fairly average, but
So
it gets the
did
job
your
done.
neighbor borrow it because he had no vacuum at all then?
Yeah, we just. I guess he didn't come prepared with his own supplies. I
Wasn't he
actually.
moving out of this house?
Yeah. So what are? What? So this is what happened though. He moved out like 6 months ago, and his roommate was still living there for the 6 months between then and now. And his roommate ended up just up and leaving in the middle of the night, just like rented a U-Haul and packed up all quick like, and then he went somewhere else. I think he went to Pennsylvania or something. But anyway, though, my version of I guess the potato touch story was I don't know if this is if this is really a I think it is kind of a good match to that story. And this doesn't happen all the time, so it really kind of stood out. Maybe it stood out because I had just watched your potato touch story, but I was standing out there ready to, I asked him if he was done with the vacuum yet, and it, he still needed it for a little while, but he was all sweaty and he was wearing a wife beater and it was rolled up, kind of like exposing his midriff. Actually, I mean, it was like exposing his whole belly, and I thought that was kind of interesting. And I I believe I asked him if he had his AC turned off because, like, in my mind, that whole scenario of somebody doing a lot of work inside the house and being all hot and sweaty to the point they need to pull their shirt up would typically happen in the summertime when it's hot outside and maybe the AC isn't working. And maybe I connected it somehow with like he didn't want to run up the AC because he wasn't living there anymore. But meanwhile, I'm standing at the front door with my coat on, and it's 30 degrees out because I live in Ohio, so totally, it's
That's
totally
funny.
inappropriate.
Um, I don't. That's not an equivalent kind of story, but it's a. You have because everything in there is NI. There's no real SI. I mean, in a sense that you could say your initial response that you see him sweaty, and you link that picture to the air conditioning being broken. You could say, well, that's because I've experienced that myself, but really it's kind of an NI linkage. And then also failing to note that it's 30 degrees right now, and therefore the air conditioning question is moot. That would be a failure to NI about one thing, but neither of those things are really SI.
Okay.
So, can you think of an example of a time when you used your intuition when you should have used your experience, or vice versa?
Well, there's that time, I suppose.
Which one didn't you use that time?
Well, I used kind of a flying squirrel form of intuition, I guess you could say, where I had this whole like narrative constructed around what was going on that was completely detached from the actual reality of the situation. I think it was like my way of dealing with the fact that like dude, if you're so hot, why don't you just turn the heat off? Because he had the heat blaring. So instead of going to the obvious solution to the problem, I kind of went somewhere else too. It might have also just been a bit of like a social anxiety kind of thing. Like I was,
I really like
I,
the fact that he has a heater that blares. And
yeah,
the heat blaring.
not like a not like a subwoofer, but blazing. It was blazing.
I mean, I prefer the weirdness of blaring myself. The heat was really loud. It's like I was saying about a plane the other day. That pilot needs to fly faster and quieter. He's flying too loud. Now, it may or may not be possible to fly louder or quieter, but nevertheless, that's how I felt about it.
Yeah, it's kind of just a side effect of flying hard, just
Can
flying really fucking hard.
you fly hard and soft too?
What?
You can fly hard and soft as well as loud and quiet.
Absolutely.
Mm. Um, do you have outdoor activities you do, such as maybe riding your bicycle, or going for hikes, or taking the dog to the dog park, or something like that?
I took my dog for a walk at the park the other day. We have a little hiking trail by our house, and I don't do that kind of stuff all the time, though. I don't really, I don't really spend a lot of time prioritizing activities. They kind of just happen to me when other people, like when my girlfriend or whatever, wants to do something. Every now and then, I like to go have a fire in the backyard.
So, if you're not at work, are you a homebody? Would you describe yourself as a homebody? I mean,
For the
everyone
most,
is for COVID. I mean, everyone is more now than before COVID, right? But
yeah, I stayed mostly the same when COVID started. Uh, yeah, I spend a lot of time at home. I think about going places a lot, and then I make a lot of plans for things that I want to do, but I don't do them very often.
do you tell the plans to anybody, or do you just make them in your head?
Now, I usually don't talk about them because it's usually kind of like weird ideas. Like, I mean, I guess it's not that weird, but like going to like a goth nightclub or something. Even though it's like I don't know of any that actually exist around here. It's kind of more of an '80s thing, but
I mean, I do like that idea. If I were gonna go to a nightclub, that would sound interesting to me too. Going to a goth nightclub.
yeah,
I don't because goths you don't think of as really going out to nightclubs and partying. You know, you think of them as being all dark and sullen or something. I guess.
yeah.
Anyhow,
Well, they get together and they do that sometimes, or at
mm,
least they did in the '80s. I think now they mostly just like I think that was mostly replaced by the emo thing. So they kind of just talk about being emo now.
goths present a very sullen evening.
I
Okay.
think it's
So, do you have creative outlets that could be taking pictures, drawing, painting, dancing, acting, singing, music, writing, anything like that?
yes. I paint on and off. I like a lot of horror stuff, so I watch a lot of horror movies, and I I've been working on writing horror screenplays, horror and kind of thriller, dark sci-fi ish screenplays. I've been working on quite a bit since I was a young teenager, but I didn't actually ever finish a screenplay until 2 years ago, or like I actually finished a full draft of a screenplay because I've been kind of circling this idea that I've had for a while that I couldn't quite put into words, but there's just a certain aesthetic that I want a horror movie to have, and I finally kind of pieced it together for this one. But now that particular uh, project is a little bit out of reach because I can't afford to make it on my own, and I know there's a lot of other like stepping stones that I need to cross over in order to get there. So
Why don't you
Right
try to
now,
sell your
like,
screenplay to Netflix or something?
I could try it. I haven't tried to do anything like that with it yet. I'm kind of just sitting on it.
Cool. So, when you talk more about the aesthetic, as you understand an ideal horror movie aesthetic, talk to me about the relationship between the music and the rest of the aesthetic of the film.
Well, the music is a large part of the aesthetic. I actually I don't know how much I would be able to use it, but it's a pretty good starting point. A little version of a score that I made for that movie. I made like 10 to 12 different little tracks. I've listened to them again, and there's maybe three of them that I feel really strongly about as far as being it's still really reflective of the vibe that I'm going for with that movie, or if not for that movie, with maybe with some other horror movie in general. Uh, but
Do you?
I guess to answer more of your question about how the music relates to the aesthetic, there's do you like The Shining? You a fan of The Shining?
I mean, I've seen it some longish time ago, but I mean, I like Stanley Kubrick's clean look of shit. You know how his movies look really staged.
Yeah, they do look really okay. So that kind of ties into the aesthetic that I see in Stanley Kubrick's movies, specifically in The Shining. Um, okay, so hold on. I'm gonna need to organize this for a second so that I can kind of go in order of what you were saying with the music, and then I want to. Can I come back around to
Say, do what you want.
the
Yeah,
visual?
I mean, I've got other questions. Like, basically, my questions are simply, I want to know if you're coming at it from an. It's always going to be orchestral, and I should be watching the film while I'm scoring it, and then what I see is going to tell me what the score should be, or do you envision, say, a certain moody song of this mood going over this scene, and more of a myah thing. So now that I've clarified a little bit more of my questions, go take whatever roundabout route you want.
um. Okay, so there's a lot more of a just kind of a droning, ominous quality to the music. Here's the best way I could describe it simply. In The Shining, there's a way that the music perfectly matches with the cinematography that creates, in my mind, this sensation of like this kind of like being in an ocean almost. It's just like a fully immersive, like being immersed in an ocean kind of experience, like an ocean of suspense and terror. And even a good amount of dark comedy, um, but really it's that like being submerged. The being submerged thing is really the most important part. And other movies also do it, and I notice when it happens, but it's such kind of like an abstract thing that it's kind of hard to put into words. But the music, as long as it complements that and it does its part of creating that particular submersion, then it's doing its job. And so the thing is that not all. Now it seems like that would just be the point in general is to create,
Okay,
an immersive.
let me switch directions here.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a scene, and then you sit with the scene for a second, and then you're going to tell me, sing to me, or just ideally sing, but otherwise describe to me, or in the last case option, if neither of those two, then pick a known song that you want to go over the scene that you think goes with the scene. Okay, the scene is this:
Okay.
a man who looks as though he's been working all day in the dusty dust because he's got old jeans on and an old cowboy shirt and cowboy hat and got a lot of dust on him. And he's at this sink that's near the chuck wagon, and he cleans himself up, and he's about to walk away, and he realizes that there's a bunch of soap bubbles that are still on top of the water. So he scoops all the soap bubbles off and puts it on the ground. And he's about to walk away, and he goes, boop, 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 and a bunch more soap bubbles pop up. So he goes, he turns around and scoops them out and pops them over. And he turns around again, pop, 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 and he looks at it, and he scoops them out, and he pops them, and then he waits. When he's sure it's not going to go again, he turns, and then, plop.
Well, initially the wind is blowing. There's a little bit of a howl of the wind when he's walking up to the sink. I picture this being very serious to start out with. He walks up to the sink, he washes his hands, and he does the soap bubble thing. And the soap bubbles are still there. And,
Okay. Do you feel as though you don't like to have, you like your intuition to emerge on its own timing, rather than, you prefer that rather than being prompted into intuiting extrovertedly?
I guess. I mean, it kind of depends on what it is. I guess there's the kind of the pressure to come up with it on the spot. Does it? If I'm thinking by myself, it tends to be a lot more free flowing. Like like when I've listened to your other typing sessions where you start out with a story and then you have the person that you're typing fill in the rest of the story. I usually can find myself kind of running away with the story.
Okay. Okay. Can you do the thing I just did? Can you describe to me a short scene, and then I'm gonna demonstrate to you what I think what the kind of answer I'm looking for would sound like, and then we'll try again with a new scene for you.
Oh, okay. There's a baby crying in a crib. It's dawn, and the baby's just waking up in the morning. The mother of the child comes into the room, and the baby's not in its crib. And the mother turns away and starts hearing the baby crying again, and the baby's crying in the room that she just came from, the living room. So she goes to the living room to look for the baby, and the baby's not there. Then she hears the baby crying in its crib again, so she goes up to the baby's room, and the baby's right there in the crib. And she picks up the baby, and she's very unsure at the moment whether or not she's the problem or if something actually just happened.
And the baby says, "You are a terrible mother." Okay, your scene sounds like this. So it goes. It starts when the first crying occurs. Before the first crying occurs, it starts with like a single violin. And then more violins come in. But then when the baby starts to cry, it starts going. And then when the mom comes in, it's slowing down. And it gets really like discordant and like free jazzy kind of as she realizes the baby's not there. And then she goes and hears it, and the music like stops for a second, but then like really low undertones like Timpanis go. You know, like that's the kind of answer that I'm hoping to get is what it's gonna sound like in that way. So,
Okay.
if they have a very short scene, there's a dog who keeps jumping back and forth over a tennis net as two people are playing tennis. But the dog never gets the tennis. He's running each way, but he's not stealing the tennis ball. But he's not returning to jump back over until he's waiting for the ball to come. So it's like this guy hits it, the dog jumps at the same time as the ball, right? But this guy hits it way over here. So that guy has to run way over there. So the dog waits until that guy hits it, and then he jumps over with the ball again. It's just that scene, back and forth.
Okay. Well, initially, when the dog's jumping back and forth over the net, and he's not catching the ball, you're saying he's just kind of chasing it. Uh, the music is going in a very, I guess, in like a Pee-wee's Big Adventure sort of way. Like it's very, like high pitched and bombastic. Like, oh, wow. And and fine. So what'd you say happened? So it goes in slow motion. Or no, I'm sorry. I inserted
You're
that.
adding that. That's fine. That you got this. That's what I was looking for. Was some sort of sense of actuality of a thing rather than describing it abstractly, right? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. And that's a perfectly good song. The first song that came into my mind, I actually had a song come into my mind instead of or melody that existed rather than something distinct, which was "Be Our Guest" from Beauty and the Beast. Like, it's be our guest, be our guest. It's just hitting back and forth, and we're hitting back and forth. And that's what I kind of heard.
I can see how the rhythm matches.
Yeah. So, okay, cool. Interesting. Very interesting. So, how are you feeling emotionally right now?
Well, I'm kind of nervous because I've never done anything like this before. Like I've never done a video chat with somebody who I've never met before, and I guess I am a little bit flustered. Like
Well,
when
I can tell you, I've yet to, I've yet to ruin anybody by the end of the timing session. So, you should be fine.
Thank you,
Um,
thank you.
okay, so let me ask then. When you feel, when you got something that makes you feel pressured and or nervous, how does that feel physically in your body?
Well, my heart beats faster, but right now that's not happening. It was initially like when we first started this. I was like, "Oh shit, here we go." But now I'm kind of calm, just kind of
But your
uh,
pancreas is a little wiggly.
yeah.
Heartbeats faster, that's normal. Wiggling pancreas, also a normal sensation. Do you feel as though emotions get stuck in your body?
No,
Why not?
no. It's I mean it's like a minute to minute basis, and I'm usually hmm, do I feel like emotions get stuck in my body? I've never thought about that before.
Do songs get stuck in your head?
Yes.
Do thoughts get stuck in your head?
Yeah, like in the sense that they repeat a lot.
Like memories? Or like, don't forget, self, you've got to get bread on the way home.
No, I do sometimes play memories,
Do you have an ego spank bank?
but huh?
Do you have an
Yeah,
ego? Yeah, okay, cool.
just a
Everybody
specific.
does. So, what can you tell me the sort of thing that might make you feel? Are you familiar with the meme "Triumph, baby"? You're sitting on the beach and going like this. Yes, I killed it.
Oh,
What makes you feel like that?
okay. If I basically if when every time I finish a project that I'm working on, or if I can come up with an idea that properly fits whatever I'm working on, that usually makes me feel like that. Be it like an artistic project, or like I came up with this different sort of model for the Myers-Briggs personality types. That's it's a visual model that it's a circle, with you would basically overlap the perceiving functions with the judging functions with these two circles, and then for half of the personality types, the circle is going to be going one way, and then for the other half, it's going to be flipped around the other way. So, like, I don't remember exactly the what the division point was between those, but like an INFJ is on one circle and an INTJ is on the other side of the circle.
Okay.
I keep on like going on tangents and stuff.
No, it's
So,
all this stuff's informative. The thing is, I mostly type people. Most of the typing gets done. Most of my understanding the person gets done between the typing questions. So, in other words, it's about how people answer questions, how people approach certain circumstances, more than necessarily what they say exactly means. But okay, let me do some direct skills testing here, though, so we can get a little bit more solid empirics. Can you tell me how to break down the task of taking a letter to the post office into exactly 6 steps?
6 steps. All right. One, you take the letter and you get in the car with it. 2, because I might have forgotten to do this beforehand, you're going to make sure that the stamp is on the letter. 3, you're going to drive up to the mailbox. 4, you're going to open the little door on the mailbox. 5, you're going to stick the letter in, and 6, you're going to close it, and then it's going to drop down in with all the other letters.
Excellent. Okay, that's very good. Can you tell me if somebody came up to you and said, two people came up to you, Joe and Bob, okay? And Joe says, Tony, you've got to help my friend Bob. He has too many guinea pigs in his mouth. What do you tell him?
Tell him to bite down.
They'll kill all the guinea pigs. He'll have a mouthful of guinea pig goo. Nobody wants a mouthful of guinea pig goo.
What's his name, Bob? I don't like
Joe,
Bob.
you don't like Bob? Okay, that's fine. Well, maybe they'll seek assistance from the local guinea pig experts, assuming there are some. Okay, let's try some TI questions. So, if every beagle eats a bagel and no bagels are eaten by non-beagles, is that the same as saying all beagles eat a bagel?
Did you start by saying if
If
every beagle
if
eats a
every
bagel?
if every beagle eats a bagel and no bagel is eaten by a non-beagle, is
Yes.
that the same as saying all beagles eat bagels?
Yes.
Is it the same as saying only beagles eat bagels?
Yes.
Which is it more the same as?
It's both the same simultaneously.
True. So in other words, if every beagle eats a bagel and no bagels eaten by a non-beagle, then both all and only. So you're right. You win. Okay, now, if some candles light people's hair on fire, and some people whose hair on fire are Michael Jackson, is it necessarily the case that some Michael Jacksons have had their hair lit on fire by a candle?
Yes.
Mm-mm. Not this
It's
time.
not. Hold on. You said.
If some candles light people's hair on fire, and some people whose hair on fire are Michael
Oh
Jackson.
no.
Okay. How about this? If no pigeons eat pudding, and I don't eat pudding, am I necessarily a pigeon?
No.
You speak truth. If we don't need more conditionals. Let's just try this one. Can you tell me who my sister's mother's husband's wife is in relation to me?
Your mother
Okay.
or your stepmother.
Yeah. Okay. Your TF pretty burly. Okay. Burly TI, burly TE. Both. This and burly SI. This is heading where I was actually. It was funny. It's like never mind. I'll save it to tell you at the end when I'm done with my process here. So now let's try this one. I'm gonna tell you a little story, and I'll make a new one up, and you're gonna tell me the moral of the story. Okay, so this is a game called. Well, that's why they always say "meagity meagity meow." So
Oh, okay.
okay, so if I say I bought this book because there's a beautiful picture on the front of it, but when I look inside, the words are terrible. I say, well, that's why they always say buy a book, don't judge a book by its cover. You know. All right, now here's the story. There are. I went to this swap meet and I saw these lithographs, and I said, you know what? Those look like they're valuable. They look really old and stuff, and I wonder who. We should pick these up. They're only $10 a piece, and I said, nah. And Rachel's like, you should just look it up in Google on the phone. I'm like, nah. And then we got home and I looked it up, and it turned out they were worth $1 million. I sure wish I had got them.
That's why they always say $10. It's just lunch.
Okay. Now, I'm going to go back to the story of the book and its cover for a second. And I'm going to demonstrate something. I want you to do the same thing about this story where I didn't buy the lithographs, okay? So if I were to talk about the book and the cover story, which is I got this book because of this great picture on the front, but the words inside are terrible. I could say at the most universal level, something like always prioritize the most salient element. Always prioritize salient elements over non-determinate ones. In other words, what's salient to a book is what it says, not the picture on the cover. So, and the picture on the cover is non-determinate. So, if I were to make it most broad and universal, I'd say always prioritize salient considerations over non-determinate ones when purchasing something, or just they could even leave that off to be maximally universal. At the most particularist level, it would be something like, never trust yourself, Eric, to buy things with your eyes because you know how you're so attracted to pretty pictures. And then somewhere in the middle would be, don't judge a book by its cover. Can you do the same thing with the one that I gave you about the lithographs?
First of all, I need a refresher on what a lithograph is.
Oh, it's just like a drawing, but it's instead of one copy of it is printed out on this like shitty way of printing that. Well, it used to be the reason that they would make like 10 copies because then the lithograph thing would break. But nowadays, they do it on purpose. They make just like 10 copies of it, and then they destroy the lithograph thing. So it's like it's got the fine art quality of being unique, but the marketability of being fungible or copyable or whatever.
Okay. So just to reiterate, like what you're asking for here is for me to come up with a like a more in-depth sort of explanation.
I'm saying make it broadest, middle, least broad.
Okay. I don't know. I'm kind of drawing a blank on it. Okay, so
take your time.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't really know how to stretch that out.
Okay, cool. That's what I anticipated would happen there with that test question. So that's always nice when things work out like you think. Once I think, okay, I think I got this guy's type. Then I ask more questions to verify. It's nice when those questions all land where they're supposed to. So let me do some value checking here. This is a self-reporting thing, but what value do you think is more important for you to uphold in the world? Do you think it's more important for you to be to be self-sufficient, like self-preserving, not needing anybody to look after you, or do you think that it's more important for you to follow through on what you say you're going to do when you make commitments to people?
Self-sufficient for sure.
Okay. And what do you think is more important for the world to uphold as a value in your eyes? So, like, if some are you going to lose respect for somebody more if they are not taking good care of themselves, like getting sick a lot because they not getting enough sleep, maybe, or whatever, or are you going to lose more respect for them because they don't follow through on what they say they're going to do?
Well, it's still the same if they're not taking care of themselves. Like if somebody doesn't follow through on what they say they're going to do, I mean, it would depend on what the thing is that they were supposed to do. Like I think that some things are harmless. Like if you say that you're going to take the trash out and you forget to do it, I don't think anybody's hurt by that. Somebody might be a little bit upset that the trash is still sitting in the kitchen, but
maybe the trash is feeling a little bit forgotten about.
What?
Maybe the trash is feeling a little forgotten about. Have you thought about the trash's feelings? Maybe it's eager to reunite with its former friends in the dumpster outside.
But if you leave it sit there for long enough, it'll have flies to keep it company.
But if you leave it sit there even longer, it'll
Yeah.
biodegrade into oil.
In
Okay.
which case,
Sorry, sometimes I get a little silly. Uh, okay, so can you express the following sentence first sarcastically and then normally? And the sentence is um, Olive Garden is the fanciest restaurant a person can go to.
Olive Garden, that's the fanciest restaurant a person can go to. Olive Garden. It's the fanciest restaurant a person can go to. Actually, I think that like the first way I did that was like really sincere and kind of like a gay way, and then the second time I did it was my way of doing sarcasm a little bit more.
Okay. So I don't I don't know for sure what you think, what you came in thinking you were, or if you how much clarity you felt you had on it. I suspect you came in probably thinking you were intuitive based on your interests and stuff, but my type of interview is ISTJ, and a pretty clear cut instance of one. And the other thing is, from my experience, a lot of ISTJs have, don't necessarily embrace that type because it's not. They don't agree with they don't identify with the descriptions of the type.
Really, you think that I'm an introverted sensing dominant? Because
Yeah.
I thought that I was kind of like watching that.
No. What you displayed is eighth slot NI. You're unable to conceptualize willfully willfully reframing at different levels.
Huh.
And your SI is great. You give me plenty of detail and plenty of example. And the thing is, you your particulars first, and the other thing is you do the thing that only a couple of types can do, which is you score high on TI and TE. There's only a few types that can do that, really.
And ISTJ must be one of them.
Yeah, and
What would be
ENTP,
the other one?
and ENTP, and ESTJ. Basically, those ones. I mean, INTJs sometimes, but INTJs get caught up in their NI too much, so they kind of lose the TI. ENTJs keep wanting to bring it back to some sort of concrete frame of solvency, whereas ISTJs are perceiving types like ENTPs. So we're both using those things instrumentally. Like your TI is where my TE is, my TI is where your TE is, and so my TE is pretty good. It was like if you were to test it the way I test TE, I would also test very well on it, just like you did, with having no problem breaking into 6 steps, knowing where you're going when you're on the outsets. That's a TE thing for sure. And but the thing is, whereas you incorporate those kind of intentional skills into your life, willingly and willfully as an operational value, and you incorporate the logic part as a countervalued thing as need be to bolster, but you don't really like it. Mine's flips the other way around.
Yeah. So you think that I'm more TE than TI? Huh?
Yeah.
And
Voshizo.
you think I'm TE enough to have it in the second slot?
Yep. I do. Why do you think you're not TE enough to have it in the second slot?
Um. Well. Okay. So my understanding of TE and FE. Another thing I actually learned from watching your videos. You that one of the reasons why I wanted to do my typing session with you is because you've actually said things in a way that gave clarity to things that I was confused about, because there's a lot of information in the typing community that it all seems to be the same, but it's still the same in like a vague way. It's like for instance, I could better use, I guess, the example of extroverted feeling, where if you say, I'm extroverted feeling, so that means that I prioritize meeting the group's value standards. Like I'm valuing making the group feel good or whatever. But when I think about that, that's still the same thing as introverted feeling, because that's something that you're valuing. So when you said that it's more about um, basically more about navigating the social atmosphere, it's sort of like playing the social game and affecting the way that people perceive you.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's a perception management thing, and it's an offense avoidance tactic in the higher slots. It's a proactive defense against being critiqued in the first slot or the second slot too. So it's like it it's focused on how to put things a lot of times, how to phrase things so that people don't get offended or whatever. The other thing is you've tested now twice polar for FE. The
I'm
first time
not.
the first time was the sarcasm test, and it's it's not a super reliable test. In other words, I get some false negatives on the sarcasm test. Some people who can do it a little bit can do a little bit of sarcasm, still are FE polar. But I don't get it. I don't think I've ever gotten any false positives on the FE polar test. And you tested as positive as you can on the sarcasm thing. I correct myself. I realized no, you didn't conflate FE and FI in your initial thing there. You were right in the sense that what you value is what you authentically hold precious, though, is different than valuing standing in the community. So when people talk about FE as being a valuing of harmony or community values, that's absolutely wrong. But it's not wrong to say that an FE person will value their standing in the community and attend to it. So now, not every FE person is going to be fixated on that in ways that look the same at all. So I'm FE, but you might say, well, Eric, you're a dick. Rachel's FE, and you might say, well, Rachel's a sweetheart. How can you both be FE? Well, that's where the slotting thing comes in. I'm not actually an FE person. My cognitive function stack is NETI, and that implies my relationship with extroverted feeling and the other functions. Your function stack is SITE. It implies your relationship with the other ones, which means TE is a way of interfacing with dynamic systems that are non-social, where anything that doesn't require you to worry about whether or not you're offending or making the other person happy in order to get what you want is a system that is going to be maximally comfortable for you to operate in.
I see. I'm not very surprised by the polar FE thing.
Did you think you were an INTJ?
Uh,
It's not a bad. It
I
would not be a bad mistyping of you. Look, the thing is, I early on in this thing, I said to myself, "Damn, this is a very intuitive ISTJ in a lot of ways. Like what you demonstrated with the music thing, being able to find a melody that is NI appropriate is very high level 8 slot NI. It's still 8 slot because when you actually push on it in ways that you can reliably predict people can either demonstrate or not, it demos directly as 8 slot. But that your NI is pretty well honed, and so much so that when I push on it in the right way, I can actually get a demo of it even though it's 8 slot, which is is neat. It means you spend a lot of time immersed in media and art and stuff like that.
Okay. Wow. So, my girlfriend is like super sure that I'm an INTP.
You're not an INTP. You don't have any extroverted intuition anywhere close actually to second slot. It's definitely fourth slot. INTPs and ENTPs alike both want to be put on the spot so they can show off how they're going to knock it out the fucking park with any extroverted intuition thing, because it's our cups overfloweth with the shit, you know. It's like I can't. If you, Rachel has very durable ears because when we drive, I'm explaining this and explaining all these other things to her that she never asked me to explain. The thing is, so the fourth slot, any looks exactly like the way you reacted, which is you've got ideas, and you're able to generate ideas. In fact, you probably make that a rather it's rather important in your life in the same way that me attending to my SI is important to me in my life. If I'm going to be functioning well and healthily, I need to make sure I incorporate enough of my fourth slot function. Our fourth slot function is the function that is maybe the best friend we have, but we invite him over too little to play.
I see. You know, I would say that that makes a good amount of sense, for the simple fact that I do. I don't really struggle to generate new ideas for like stories and whatnot, but I never really get too enthusiastic about just like jumping and flying with them. It's always kind of like I'm very critical about my ideas, and I have to like kind of nurse them until they become something really close to this sort of central thing that I'm trying to express in either artistic terms, and then it's also informed by just kind of general impressions that I have about human beings and the world that we live in.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me as though you've cultivated a good relationship with intuitive kinds of knowledge. And the thing about SI DOMs, people often underestimate SI DOMs because they forget SI is the learning function. So, depending on what you direct your attention to learning, there are things in life that you can't change, your functions. But there are aspects in life in which you can easily optimize and grow indefinitely, and those things are called disciplines, like music, art, making, martial arts, like I guess yoga or something like that would be something that you can never really master, and you're always. Well, I don't know about yoga because I don't know if you always try to get better at it, but something you can't really master, but you can always try to get better at it. Is enables SI types to evolve beyond the sort of insular particularism that's implicit to us, which is we start with our own example and extrapolate out from it and go like, well, my INFJ girlfriend likes olives, therefore INFJs like olives. That's our natural epistemological bias, whereas the NI types has the opposite kind of natural epistemological bias. They say INFJs love olives, therefore you, being an INFJ, must love an olive. Regardless, the thing is, the SI learning function combined with a discipline of art have allowed you to I think optimize well in terms of having a good relationship with functions that are necessarily very unconscious, specifically NI. The eighth slot is most unconscious. It's not the weakest, like if we want to use weak strong or whatever, but it's the most unconscious. That's why you can't come up with an example of a potato touch story.
So that, like, the potato touch story, that was an example of NI.
Well, it was an example of two NIs that didn't connect to each other.
Okay.
So it's like the first NI told you an NI thing about something, which you're going to have plenty of that automatically popping up all the time. Just like I do so much stuff. I just, I don't think of myself as doing anything really. It just happens, you know? But it's going to be popping up all the time like that. But it's not going to be able to shift frame levels. Just like you couldn't shift frame levels in the in that story thing, or the moral of the story thing, so too is it the case that what needed to happen there was for you to see the frame of reference, hot guy house, moving, exercise, whatever, within a larger frame of reference, which included not just when how you see people normally as getting hot, but instead the larger context of the weather right now, the fact that one can also have a heater on, etc. In other words, your NI didn't work outward and to encapsulate larger things. It just did the job that it needed to in the moment because it's 8th slot.
Gotcha. Where would my SE be?
5th, which is when I was asking the absolute values of self-sufficiency and or follow through. You articulated the conscious one of those, both for yourself and sort of for the external world. I think what you were trying to get at, although I may have ended up kind of cutting you off or something, was that you can't really follow through if you're not actually taking care of yourself anyway, or something like those two are kind of the same. I'm not sure exactly where you're going with that, but regardless, it should be the case that in actuality, what causes you to go, okay, I just have no respect for that person, ultimately will be failures in SE. So the people you will least respect will be probably INTPs and INFPs because they're SE polar.
Oh, I've never thought about that. I haven't really
You're FE polar, so you don't
considered
think
it
about
that way.
respect very much. You don't think about respect hardly at all because you're FE polar. So that's a bad. It's a bad metric for FE polar people. I hadn't even thought about that when I just mentioned it. It's a bad metric for you.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, ISTJ. Yeah, I've considered that one before, but like I ended up dismissing it pretty quickly. Not because it's like a popular type or anything.
No, it's
I guess
not a
like
popular type.
ISTJ.
People do not like to be ISTJs or want to be because they have such unsexy
Well,
type descriptions. Type descriptions make them sound like a bunch of dullards.
oh,
You're cool like my friend Cameron. You know, my friend Cameron did all the picture drawing and all the art. He's an ISTJ for my video that I made for a song called Spud Brow Spree, the potato song. It's a kid song, sort of, you know, or it started out as a poem. It's kind of like a kid's poem, and so it's kind of like a kid song. And he drew all the pictures and stuff and artwork for it. So can ISTJs be very active and successful and in doing artistic stuff? Yeah, he's a great drawer and a great collaborator to work with. I'm not a good collaborator to work with. That's the
I
problem.
um I just went popular though, as in like spread out,
Oh, you mean common?
off common. Yeah, but yeah.
They're common. ICJs are common. They're not common in the typology community because typology is mostly an NI-TI thing. And since your NI is super unconscious and your TI is countervalued, then most ISTJs don't have an interest in cognitive functions or typology at all. They find it non-informative. However, like I said, SI DOMs are still fundamentally perceivers, and perceivers are more likely to be interested in it because they're trying to understand how they are perceiving things rather than what the judgment should be about things. So, so there's like ISFJs and ISTJs sometimes do appear in the typology community, and sometimes can get quite like ISFJs, as I've noted, have gotten quite robust at their understanding of it and everything because they've chosen to learn it. And I was also used to date an ISFJ who I was with for 2.5 years. She never learned a goddamn thing because she never directed her attention towards learning it on purpose. So that's one of the things about an SI Dom is they will learn what they choose to learn, and they will not learn what they don't choose to learn. Whereas intuitives will typically accidentally learn a bunch of shit.
Okay. That makes sense what you said there. As far as like the typology thing goes, though, like I've always been kind of skeptical about it, as far as at least with the way that I understood it to be before, because like I was saying, a lot of the cognitive functions, the way that they're typically explained, there's a lot of room where you can see where they bleed into each other. It almost becomes kind of redundant to
Yeah, the way a lot of people explain it, they are intentionally explaining it to so as to not create any sharp edges, any boundaries, because those sharp edges and boundaries allow people to negate what they're saying. If you keep it all soft and fluffy and don't say anything, then it's hard to say you're wrong. You know, if I say the sky is blue, dogs are nice, ISFJs are good loving people, and a bunch of other fucking stupid platitudes, then you know, it's like, yeah, you don't mean anything. I mean shit. I can tell you exactly what I mean. When I say your NI is 8th slot, I mean you are unable to do this very clearly articulated skill of frame level management. Additionally, it is the most unconscious, which means you are unable to articulate examples of instances when you used your intuition over your experience because it's 8th slot. And the thing is, I can point to examples, counterexamples. Here's somebody with NI in a different slot, how they answer this question differently. And I can show you multiple examples of those. And a bunch of other shit. And I can show you multiple examples of people who've taken that FE polar test, who've not failed, who've not tested positive for FE polar. And I can show you the ones who have. And now you won't be able to tell the difference. You'll say, this is not an objective issue. It's not. You can't objectively determine whether or not someone successfully was sarcastic or not. The fuck, I cannot. That is the most FE polar thing in the world to say, because the correct way to say the thing about the Olive Garden was this. The sarcastic way to say it is, "Oh, Olive Garden's the most fanciest restaurant in the world," and the regular way of saying it is, "I think Olive Garden's like the fanciest place around." So you have to that sort of thing is the key tone thing of sarcasm, and it was absent from yours. You did something different, which was like just be more bright in your tone, which is so textbook FE polar. The thing is, some of these things do break down into skills. So most people can't answer those TI questions nearly as well as you can. Only a fairly select group of people can do so. And I agree your TI answers were very strong for 6th slot. But it can't be anyplace else, because if you were dominant TI, you'd be either any polar, which you're not, or you'd be any tool, which you're not.
well, hold on, with something when you were saying what you were saying about the sarcasm thing, I think that people usually can tell when I'm being sarcastic, but I can think of a lot of times as a child where people didn't know I was being sarcastic. And
I mean, you have a fairly unemotive affect. Like my affect is very emotive, right? It's like, hey, 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 look at me! I'm telling you with my myahs what emotions I'm having. And the thing
yeah,
is, you're paying attention to almost none of that data, and you're providing almost none of that data.
I see. This is very interesting. This is very interesting because you're definitely seeing things that I couldn't see in myself.
Well,
I mean, I knew that I had low FE. I didn't know exactly how low, but I'm not gonna sit here and think I'm like an ENFJ or something.
the thing is, you're impressing me because it's challenging for any ISTJ to not, or ISFJ too, to not be drawn towards this notion that everyone is made up primarily of their own experience rather than being an example of some configuration. They're made by their experience is the SI assumption. So SI DOMs, ISTJs especially, usually have trouble getting over that notion. But you, like I said, have an active relationship with like aesthetics, and that's very perception-y, you know.
Well, I do think that people are made up by not even necessarily their own experiences, although that's a big. I mean, obviously, like from the time you're born, you're made up from those experiences, but I don't think there's any reason to believe that people aren't born with certain cognitive processes already in place. Not referring to like MBTI stuff,
No,
just
you're absolutely right.
and not just
On both
physical
points
brain
there.
functions, not just physical brain functions, but um, well, that kind of becomes a whole other thing because I'm not a materialist. Like,
Look, it's a way of being, and anytime we try to make static statements about ontology like that, we tend to sacrifice meaning, actually mean anything. English prime is a good way to resolve general epistemological questions. Reduce your language to an actual agent actually verbing something. So, it's like when we're talking about attentional manners, what it boils down to is to be an ENTP is to be expressing, to be an ISTJ is, SI is not something you have, it's who you are foremost. You're a knower, a gatherer of accumulated reference points, all of which increasingly inform your paradigms.
I'm envisioning what you're saying, and it makes a lot of sense in a way that I never saw before. Um, and as far as the you said my TI would be in the sixth slot, right? And that's the critical one.
Yeah, so you're going to
And
be mad at yourself if somebody successfully proves you wrong or illogical.
I am very defensive about my own logic. Like yeah, I tend to be critical of other people when they like if somebody says something stupid, and I try very hard to make sure that I myself don't say stupid things. Sometimes to a detriment, because sometimes trying to control too much, uh, it just it causes too many jobs being done at once, and then um, it's harder to just kind of flow with whatever I'm trying, with whatever point I'm trying to make. I definitely like to be very in control of what I'm doing at all times. And anytime I'm not in control, I find it kind of disturbing. Even though I can be hella more charismatic if I'm not so in control of what I'm doing. Like, I think the most charismatic I've ever been was after I got my wisdom teeth taken out and I was coming off of the anesthesia and I was in the car on the way home and I was sitting in the back seat just kind of like rattling off all of this shit. And when I watch it, it's like you can barely understand what I'm saying because I have fucking bloody cotton balls in my mouth. But I look just so free when I'm doing that. And I can't really do that all the time. But the thing is that
so
when I'm watching,
you were most charismatic when you were drooling after dental surgery because you were on drugs.
yeah,
That's what you're telling me.
yeah,
Okay, that's not what normally people would call charisma. But I get what you're saying. Is you saw in yourself a comfort with yourself, a lack of worry about how you would be perceived, that you would like to see yourself manifest more frequently.
yeah, like that version of myself that was sitting in the back of the car, I would have more fun hanging out with than I think the way that I often am in like social situations. But
Well, I think the solution's pretty obvious.
just start taking drugs.
Right.
I
I'm
do
just,
smoke weed from time to time, but
good for you.
I get I have to be careful with it though because I get panic attacks. If I smoke too much at one time, I think I'm dying, and my heart is just like trying to pound out of my chest. And I really don't need very much. If I just have a very small dose, it tends to kind of like pop whatever portions of my mind open that I want to be open.
Okay, well, let me tell you what I'm going to do for you, Tony. I'm going to do.
Hey, by the way, my name is actually Kyle. That email address is one that I made up with sort of a pen name that I was kind of going with at the time that I've since abandoned. But I use it for stuff that's important but casual, things that aren't like work related.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, it. Nice to meet you as Kyle as well. A lot of people go by some handle regardless. So I'm accustomed. Like when I'm on the internet and logged in as Mindy's Club, I'm Mindy. That's it. Everything's heart emojis.
Hell yeah, Mindy's Club.
I got such an exciting email today from YouTube. I wonder what's gonna happen with that. I got like a special email like you're invited to join this special thing or something. So we'll see. I don't know anything about it. They don't. You know YouTube never tells you anything really about anything. They say vagaries and you go and put a lot of like fireworks emojis and shit on stuff and you go, wow, this looks pretty important. I wonder. It doesn't actually say anything. Anyway, okay, so I'm gonna stop this recording now. And or do you want me to share it with you privately, or are you okay with me publishing?
You can publish.
Cool. I think people will really enjoy this, and I think you'll find the other people's thoughts in the premiere informative as well.
All right.
All right, cool.
Thanks, man.
Thanks so much. Have a good evening.